Hold on one second. This meeting is being recorded. Excellent.
What is your most vivid memory from childhood?
Such a mishmash of memories, things that I may or may not have remembered, things that I was told and think as a result I remember. My father, who was a doctor, died at the age of 43 when I was 2 years old. And I really have no memories of him at all, none. Although, as was the custom in those days, doctors had offices in their homes. Downstairs in our house was his office. It remained his office for years and years and years, until my mother finally decided that she should turn it into something else, since my father was long gone. But I was operated on when I was 3 years old. I was cross-eyed or wall-eyed. I should distinguish between the two. I guess cross-eyed, your eyes point in, or one eye points in. Wall-eyed, which was the condition that afflicted Jean-Paul Sartre. One eye is facing out. And I was severely wall-eyed, and I was operated on. I was operated on by an ophthalmologist who later turned into my stepfather. He married my mother some 20 years later. And I always talk about the story as a new version of Oedipus. He blinded me and married my mother.
What is your first aesthetic memory?
Aesthetic? Maybe I had no aesthetic
awakening. I'm sorry. The thing that sort of motivated you to want to be an artist?
I don't know if I ever made a decision to be an artist. I've always looked at art as a default position, not for much else. What else would I do with myself? Thank God there's the ability to do this. Art has a Bartleby element to it, as I always imagine it. A desire not to do the things that everyone else is doing, to remove oneself, to create some ironic distance between yourself and the world. So I would say for that reason, thank God for art. I was a rock climber years ago. I actually lived in Yosemite Valley for a good part of a year climbing. And I always had this fantasy. There's the famous Mallory line, why he climbed Everest, and he said because it was there. The line that I preferred, that I would use, although I've never in truth had any desire to climb Everest, but I always wanted to have the opportunity to say, why did you climb Everest? Because it was elsewhere. And that's how I look at art more or less as well. It isn't the default position. It is elsewhere. God knows where it is, but it's not there. It is elsewhere.
Who were your early influences when you were coming of age?
I still am coming of age, except there is no more age, really. Writers that I loved. I read a lot of things my mother felt perhaps I should not be reading. So I loved the Oz books. I loved Alice in Wonderland. I loved Robert Louis Stevenson. I loved a lot of kids' literature and read voluminously. Looking back on it now, I often think the worst day in my life was the day that I became literate. No one warned me. No one said anything. You know, this is going to be a vale of tears. As a result of being literate, you are going to be afflicted with words for the rest of your life. There will be no surcease, no escape.
Wow.
No one said, you know, I'm sorry for doing this to you. You should think twice before becoming literate. No warnings, no travel advisories, no packaging that suggested that this could be harmful to your health. Much, much worse, I might add, than cigarette smoking.
Is your work autobiographical in any sense?
How can work not be autobiographical in any sense? I mean, unless, you know, it's being made by a machine, and then it's still autobiographical. The machine is writing its machine autobiography.
Good answer.
Oh, please.
What role does truth play in your work?
I'm obsessed by it. I don't even know exactly why. I'm obsessed by truth and I'm obsessed by error. But it's the search for truth. I published a book recently, The Ashtray, and I tell the story from my childhood. There were kids who lived in the area. Actually, it's the first time anybody ever called me a Christ killer was a kid in the neighborhood. And I had to ask my mother exactly what he was talking about. And she explained to me that it was a form of anti-Semitism. And I said, well, okay, I know exactly what to do. The next time someone calls me a Christ killer, I apologize. I'm really, really sorry for killing Christ, and I promise never to do it again. So that's always my argument for almost anything. Apologize immediately, I promise never to do it again, and if that fails, offer 1,000 hours of community service.
What role does fiction play in your work?
Since almost everything is fiction, an enormous role. But there's the pull of the world, the pull of reality, which is also part of it as well. So, story from my childhood, my brother, who was much smarter than myself, my brother was 6 years older. I really admired him. I was in awe of him. He later became a computer scientist, an estimable computer scientist at MIT and elsewhere. But he had told me this, I guess it's a joke. It's a kind of question you're supposed to ask people, which is further west, Los Angeles or Reno, Nevada? And if you are not sufficiently informed, you say, oh, Los Angeles is further west. But you would be wrong. So I had an atlas. I loved my atlas, my Rand McNally's atlas. Loved, loved, loved it. So I get out my Rand McNally's atlas. I run into the house. I come back with the atlas into our backyard. And I show the kid. that actually Reno is further west than Los Angeles. And we had bet $1. And he tells me, well, lines of longitude don't run across the water. And I say, huh? Yeah, they do. And he said, no, they don't. And I looked at him, I saw that he was much bigger than myself, older, and that somehow I was not going to win this one, that logic would fall short, hopelessly fall short. And I think it's a central lesson. There are facts of the matter. There is a real world out there. There's truth, there's falsity. Is Los Angeles further east of Reno? The answer is yes. Yes, it is. Did that mean I was going to collect my $1? No, it didn't. I was going to lose. So what do we infer from all of this? God knows. Nothing good, I might add. And then I had this good fortune. I think it corrupted me in a lot of ways, because I worked on this case in Texas that ultimately became The Thin Blue Line, a movie that got an innocent man out of prison. Not an easy thing to do. In fact, if the movie had been made now instead of at the end of the 80s, I would not have been successful, because the laws have changed and the ability to appeal convictions, rightly or wrongly, has been severely limited, circumscribed. I, in all likelihood, would not have been successful. But it introduced me to a whole world of thinking about the law, about evidence, about trials, about prosecutions, and on and on and on and on. It still has influenced me to this day.
What is the least favorite part of the artistic process for you?
God, there's so many unfavorite parts. It would be.
Here's a list.
Well, as I point out to people, being a filmmaker is an opportunity to always be in a mendicant position. You are really begging and pleading most of the time. Most often not on my knees, but I suppose if necessary, that would come into play as well. It's wanting to work. You're involved in a form of photography that actually does require resources.
Yes.
It's not as if you can just exercise your index finger, push a button. Not that any photographer can. I think that's misleading too. But your photography is more involved. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things that makes it so interesting.
I do my share of pleading as well.
Oh, we all do. It doesn't matter, I believe. Maybe if you're so successful that people are just shoveling money at you. I always love the idea that Picasso never really had to carry cash around with him, because all he had to do was sign the check. And that was it. And if that didn't suffice, draw a little picture on the check and sign it.
What is the best part for you in terms of the artistic process? The part you love the most?
the ability to think about stuff. Really, it's what's the most important thing of all. The ability to reflect and refine ideas. There's really nothing better than that. I mean, that's what I live for.
What is your favorite film, book, or work of art?
Oh, there's so many of them. I remember on the 50th anniversary of Citizen Kane, I was asked by the New York Times, why is Citizen Kane the greatest movie ever made? And I said, well, that's simple, it isn't. And then they asked me, well, what is? Not Citizen Kane, what's the greatest movie or the greatest American movie? But let's just go with the greatest movie. And I said, Detour.
Oh, wow.
And I do love Detour. Is it really the greatest movie ever made or even the greatest American movie? But it's a movie that I really like. And there should be some element of perversity in your choice. What am I supposed to say? You know, girl with a pearl earring, the night watch. You know, fuck that.
What is it about Detour that moves you so or inspires you?
It's the presence of total despair. Who couldn't be attracted to such a thing? The unrelenting hopelessness of it all. It's, for me, a really, really funny, and maybe despair to me, am I revealing too much here? For me, despair is really funny.
Yeah.
It'd be funnier than hopelessness. Say, for example, the situation we are in now. Isn't this funny?
Define your terms.
No, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. What do you see as the fundamental difference between the still and moving image? As you've studied both and have considered.
Well, I hate to be fatuous here, but one is moving and one is still.
That's very well put. Do you want to leave it at that?
Well, I could. Still photography fascinates me because it abstracts all of the problems that we have with moving images, simplifies them in a way, but most surprisingly of all, in simplifying them, shows you that they're not simple at all. They're endlessly complex. I sometimes think that motion picture photography and still photography gives us deep insights into the nature of photography and representation and art. And the same kinds of questions that arise in still photography, of course, also arise in motion picture photography as well.
Taken as a whole, what do you see as the central themes and preoccupations in your work?
I'll stick with self-deception, delusion.
Good. Good.
Actually, there's a central theme of self-deception and delusion in photography. It was the hope that photography, and I use it in an inclusive sense, both motion picture photography and still photography, would give us some purchase on the world, that this was truth.
Yeah.
In celluloid and digital media, however you want to look at it. And we have come to understand more and more clearly over the years how that is not true. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., when he said that photography was a mirror with a memory, it's a fabulous line, but it also tells us that it's a mirror, and memory itself is something so complex and confused. Now, I love thinking about photography. And I'm endlessly puzzled by people who somehow think that you're going to read truth off of a photographic plate, or truth in some unadulterated, complexified form, which of course is just not true. What are human beings? Human beings are lying machines. And in the course of human history, we've discovered and rediscovered new ways to lie, new ways to confound ourselves, to deceive ourselves, to misrepresent to ourselves the nature of the world around us. It is utterly amazing that we've been able to come up with science and mathematics, and that we are able to try to come to a deeper and better understanding of the world around us. But the default position for humanity is self-deception and lying. And I'm like one of those bugs on a board, pinned to a board, wriggling, trying to figure out what's going on around me, sometimes less successfully than others, but I try.
Who's your imagined audience?
Oh, people in some standard nursing home strapped to their beds with no possibility of egress.
Has a work of art or film ever made you cry?
Endlessly. I was just listening to, one of the amazing things about the digital world as a classical musician now, the ability to listen to anything and everything, endless versions of, if you want 100 different versions of Chopin waltzes, it's available to you in a way that was just not true maybe even 10, 20, 30 years ago. But I was going to write an essay on this. A pianist that I really, truly love, Dino Lapatia, a Romanian pianist who died in his early 30s. He died of cancer. Fabulous pianist, much beloved by many people. And there's a Chopin waltz that he plays. This was played very near the end of his life. He was dying. And when I listen to it, I start crying. And I don't even know why, but I do know there's something in that performance. In case anyone has a doubt about whether or not performance has a role to play in anything, but in music, it does. And I wrote an essay. I guess this is goes back to my childhood. I wrote an essay for the New York Times on Sparky's Magic Piano. I don't know if you saw this, but I think it would interest you. So my mother was a classical musician, a much better classical musician than myself. She was a graduate of the Juilliard, nearly had a PhD in piano, and was an extraordinary pianist in her own right. So I was given this record as a child, Sparky's Magic Piano, okay? It's a story about a kid, say someone like myself, who doesn't really practice. If I remember one thing from my childhood is being lectured endlessly about my lack of discipline. You, sir, have no discipline, and you will never, 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 never become anything. You are an embarrassment. Probably true. I mean, who am I to argue? So I get this record, this 78, as they were in those days. This was 1,000 years ago. And Sparky is a kid who won't practice. And his lesson is coming up. I don't know if you play an instrument, but anybody who plays an instrument has had this experience. You haven't really prepared for your lesson. The lesson is rapidly approaching. You know you're going to be reprimanded. And as the time for the lesson approaches, Sparky hears a voice. Sparky. Sparky says, "Who's that?" The voice says, "I'm the magic piano, and I'll play anything you want me to." And so Sparky, of course, aces his lesson. He plays extraordinarily well. His teacher can't quite believe it. But there you have it. He has become almost a concert pianist. And in fact, he does, because he tours the world with his magic piano and becomes an enormous success. Until one day, he comes home, he's performing for everybody, his friends, his family, his teachers, and the piano says to him, "Sparky, I can't play for you anymore." And Sparky pleads with the piano, but And I didn't remember this until I got the record again years later. Sparky wakes up and it's a dream. And he thinks, "Oh, I am going to resolve to practice every day. I'm going to work hard and make something of myself. I'm going to become a great pianist through practice and effort and discipline." Okay? So I have a friend, a close friend of mine, who teaches at what I call the junior college down the street. It's the rival to where you are. I think they call themselves Harvard. And my friend Alfred, who I play cello piano with, I'm a cellist, he also had Sparky's magic piano as a child. One of the very few people I know who actually also listened to Sparky's magic piano and presumably was influenced by it. Okay? He took something completely different away from the story. He took what you're supposed to take away, I guess. Work hard, practice, make something of yourself, for God's sakes. What I took away from it was, you're fucked. You're totally fucked. You're never going to be anything. You won't practice, you know that. You have no inherent talent. You need the magic piano. And the magic piano is fickle. Just when you need the magic piano, most of all, the magic piano is just simply going to say, "Fuck you, Sparky," or "Fuck you, Errol. Go fuck yourself." To me, it's one of the most despairing stories that I've ever heard. It's a story of total despair. And so I wrote an entire essay about this. And I suppose there would be lots of artists who would disagree, but part of doing anything, I suppose art would be a good example, is the feeling that you can't do it alone, that you need crutches, that you're dependent on all of these unseen forces, all these magic pianos.
You have, I seem to remember you have a fuck you school of art making. Is that correct?
Why?
Philosophy?
I regretted talking about it. I talked about it because you invited me down, very kindly invited me down to Yale to deliver a lecture. And do I really believe it?
Yeah.
Part of me does. I made a movie about, and got myself, I suppose, into a lot of trouble, making a movie about Stephen K. Bannon, or making a movie with Stephen K. Bannon, even worse. And in the movie, I described Trump as the fuck you president. I still think it's a good insight on my part that maybe his deepest appeal is his ability to say fuck you to everything. I'm not endorsing this as a good thing. I think in this instance, it's a really pernicious thing. But the fuck you president. You want ventilators? Fuck you. You know, you want some effective management of the coronavirus crisis? Fuck you. Do it yourself. So when you kindly invited me to Yale, I mentioned there was this possibility that some of the greatest works of art came from that kind of desire. And I mentioned the St. Matthew Passion as one example. Another for me would be Beethoven's Diabelli Variations, where you're asked to do something that you have no desire to do, and you do it anyway, and in doing it, you deliver a kind of fuck you to the people who requested it initially. It's my fantasy, but when Bach was appointed at Leipzig, he had to sign a contract with the church promising them no overly long music, no overly dramatic music, no overly complex music. And I see the elders of the church filing in for the first performance of the St. Matthew Passion, arguably the greatest work of music in the Western canon. He was very talented. And they see two orchestras, two choruses, a boys' choir, a work of music that goes on for 3 hours, incredibly dramatic, incredibly complex. What could this be aside from an enduring masterpiece, but a form of fuck you to the elders of the church from Johann Sebastian Bach?
What is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Probably art. Why not?
How has success affected your work?
Well, if I have been successful, it's not at all together clear to me that that's the case. If this is success, it doesn't quite feel like it. Or as I imagine success should feel. It doesn't feel very much different from anything that I've experienced before. There's a certain sameness to all of it. To me, you know, being successful is the ability to go on and do your work. I mean, it seems stupid maybe to say it, but I'll say it anyway. Why do I make movies? So I can make more movies. I make a movie, what do I want to do? I want to make another. It's an insatiable need. And art is very demanding. It sinks its hooks into you, and then there's no escaping it. It just comes after you and drags you along after it, willing or unwilling.
What have you learned through failure?
Probably to go on. Now, there's an element of failure in everything, but one would like to continue. And then, after all, if you continue long enough, maybe things will get better, or you'll get better. Or you'll learn how to play the piano, or you'll become less dependent on Sparky.
What do you think the artist's job is in a time of crisis?
I think to try to think about it, to address it, to figure out what it means to you, perhaps to help other people understand what's going on. Hard to be successful always doing this. When I made this movie with Bannon, I felt it's something that I should do. After all, Bannon was responsible in good measure for the election of Donald Trump, something which is one of the worst things that's happened during my lifetime. It continues unabated. And I wanted to understand it myself. I wanted to understand it better. I wanted to wrestle with it. Who was this man? There's a line that my friend Philip Gurevich wrote in his book. We regret to inform you that tomorrow we're to be killed with our families. His book about the Rwandan genocide. Actually, one of the best lines I've ever read. He said, people are endlessly confused. Decrying evil is not the same as doing good. And the desire to try to understand something that I don't understand. I mean, if we look around today, I get 3 papers delivered to me, hard copies of papers, the Boston Globe, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, every day. Well, the Wall Street Journal doesn't come on Sunday, but nearly every day I get these papers on my breakfast table. Although now we're scared even to pick them up from the front lawn. And I read that Donald Trump's figures of his handling of the coronavirus crisis has increased his popularity and his public acceptance. Well, this is deeply mysterious to me. It really is. Are we this, as a country, this deeply irrational? But what the hell is going on? I mean, I think I know what's going on, but clearly I don't. I can be as delusional, as misinformed, as misguided as the next, but I'd like to try to figure out what the hell is going on. I mean, do you know?
No. I'm going to you for wisdom here.
I'm not sure I'm the right person to seek wisdom from. Yeah, it's a crazy time.
Yeah. Are you working on something now?
Well, I'm probably exactly like you. I'm always working on something.
Yeah.
And I'm working on a number of projects. I have a project with John le Carré. have a Timothy Leary project, and I'm in the process of still making stuff. What else am I going to do? Got to do something.
So my last question is, what did...
You have a lot of questions here.
Say it again?
You have a lot of questions here.
Yeah. Well, you've answered them all beautifully. It's okay to ask one more?
Of course.
Yeah. It's an important one. What advice would you give to the students in this moment of peril?
To go on with it all. One of my very favorite poems, perhaps my very favorite poem, is written by Yeats, Lapis Lazuli. I mean, he says about a whole number of tragic figures, if worthy their part in the play, do not break up their lines to weep. And there is no advice other than to go on with it all, because what choice really do we have? Certainly I'm as inclined to despair as the next guy, but we're all lucky. We're all artists or involved in some way with the arts. It's an opportunity to reflect and to talk about the world, to think about the nature of the world and our place in it. And we're lucky. We're lucky to be in that position. I'm lucky to be in that position. Maybe no one wants to listen, but that's okay.
Well, before we end, I'd like to ask all the students to open up their video and audio so we could thank you for this extraordinary meeting. There they are.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Errol. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A round of applause for everyone.
Greg.
Maybe someday that we can all meet again in the lecture hall. That would be nice.
Yes, please. Yes.
Anytime.
Yes.
Please. Thank you, Errol, for taking the time out and really such.
Oh, Patty, you have video.
And let's also thank Zoom.
All the students in their various apartments around New Haven.
Thank you, Gregory, again. And hopefully this will not be the last time I enjoy doing it. Thank you so much.
No, I certainly hope not. And we're very, very thankful. And thank you for giving us these words of wisdom in this moment. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.